So my name is Daniel McLeod. I'm the director of the Jesuit Center for Catholic Studies here at St. Paul's. We're excited to begin. This is, I think, the 7th year, Dr. Bucola, formations and reformations in Catholic studies. I think it was 7 years, I think, right?
Maybe more than that.
I think it was 2016 or 2017, yeah. Anyway, Dr. Bucola and I are aging rapidly. I'll speak for myself, I suppose. But we've had this for now. This is our 7th year, and we're excited today that Father Albert Evrard has joined us from France. Some of you will be familiar with Father Albert, but I'll introduce him. A former lawyer in the Brussels bar. Father Albert was with us several years ago as a visiting scholar, both here and at Robson Hall in the School of Law, and now he is senior lecturer at the Catholic University of Toulouse in France, and his research is on aging in political science as well, international relations, and over the last 3 years he's been a member of the Holy See's representation to the United Nations as part of a working group on aging. So Father Albert's research, which a lot of it he completed with us over the 2 years he was here, right in the heart of COVID, it kind of probes us to think differently about different periods of our lives and values and the systems, government, church, and otherwise that help form us at these particular times. So, although this is his introduction, more than anything else, Father Albert is, of course, our close friend here at St. Paul's, and he was with us for those great 2 years. Well, they were the pandemic. They were great, but anyway, we're so pleased that he could join us today, and we're looking forward to your talk. Thanks, Father.
Thank you for your invitation and your words of welcome. Dear Dan, dear Professor Bakula, all members of Center for Catholic Studies, dear students, also to you who are listening to us online or perhaps watching this conference from home later on. Thank you very much. There is something moving about coming back to St. Paul College for this lunchtime reading. But let's start immediately with the title, Grasping the Pope's International Position. So, in a way, the aim of this talk is to help us to understand the Pope's international position. And even when we're expressing yourself in this way, we have to realize that we are using approximations. The aim is just to continue using them, but with an awareness of what they are, or to replace them with appropriate terms. And I have one example of this. When you look at the official website of foreign affairs of the French or the Belgian government, they talk about the Vatican, they talk about the Holy See, but they're using the terms, but behind the terms, there is a wrong understanding of what it means. So the main purpose is to grasp an understanding of what we're talking about when we're speaking about the Pope's position through Church, through Holy See, through Vatican City-State. And of course, what we have to use to go into that is our imagination. And look carefully at this image, because you see God, which is in a kind of nimbo. But this nimbo does have the form of your brain. This is a picture of the Vatican Sixtine Chapel, right? So how we use our imagination to understand correctly what is this association of Holy See, Vatican City-State, Church, where the Pope does have a central position. That's the purpose of this talk. And using our imagination, there is nothing better to think about food. And there is nothing better to think about what you can get at the Bell Tower Cafe here downstairs. So I suggest we think about just a burger. And you have to think about the whole burger, because you're biting this burger as a whole. But biting this burger as a whole, it means that you're not saying, oh, I don't care about the salad leaf. I don't care about the onion. No, you're taking the full burger for the full experience. And we go through the different layers of this burger. And of course, you will understand that each layer is in a way melding with the other one. And that's exactly what we intend when we speak about international position of the Pope through the Church, through the Holy See, and through the Vatican City State. But first of all, we have to say something about the material that we are using when we look at this. And we're considering four different sources. When I say that, it's not just as a scholar, but when I go to the Holy See representative at the UN, we are invited to go through all these sources as a way to get an understanding of what is happening and get an understanding of what the Pope wants to insist on. And we have to first look at the Pope's annual addresses. It's usually January of each year. Addresses to the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See, and the response of the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps in Rome. Then we have to look at the Pope's address to the diplomatic corps of a given country on the occasion of an apostolic visit to that country. Second source. Third source, we have to look at the addresses of the Pope at the meeting of the 120, more or less, nuncios in Rome. They gather each year, 2 times, 1 time. So we have to look at this Pope address as well. And we can also go to the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church, 2004, and to look at specific paragraph of this compendium, because there is something said about the Church and about the Holy See and its mission. Additionally, talking about international presence of the Pope at multilateral level of the international community, we immediately think about the United Nations. And then we have to think about especially a General Assembly Resolution 58/314, which is fully dedicated on the participation of the Holy See in the work of the United Nations. It is made public on July 16, 2004. It gives both an internal and external way to what the Church, its right, can say about itself, but what the international community say about the Holy See present in its midst. As far as multilateral diplomacy is concerned, and it shows in any case how much the expected word goes through the usual channels used by the states, but always after them, but with the same rights except that of voting. Thinking about this international community, we have to understand that among the 197 states in the international community, you have 193 UN members. But if you look at those 193 UN members, diplomatic relations with the Holy See. Be careful, the Holy See, not the Vatican city-state, not the Church, the Holy See. It's with all countries except 12. Just to grasp this, the importance of that in the international community, just by comparison, think about China. China does have an ambassador in 169 countries. United States, 168. France, 161. Don't know exactly about Canada, but it must be around that number as well. So this is at that level of bilateral relations, diplomatic relations, but also multilateralism. Now, the question is not only where to look, but the question is how to look at those sources. Do we have any preconceptions about the presence on the international scene of the Holy See as a unique entity, self-defining entity, but also entity recognized by the usual members of the international community and by their law? Do we have any preconceptions about the Church's presence in the international community? The target material is doctrine. The large number of articles and books, most often in Italian or English, sometimes in other languages, start from the idea that neither the Holy See nor the Vatican City-State may meet the usual criteria that define a state. So that's a preconception that you can find in a lot of books and articles. So when you start reading those sources, not the first-hand material, but the second-hand material, you have to be careful at that point. And practice at the United Nations within the Holy See delegations shows how much reference is made to these sources and how much strict respect is expected for the place given by the states to the delegation and the word that is expected from it. Not only in matters of human rights, but also in all matters, and we will end this speech with one example, and I will take the example of the Statute of Jerusalem. However, before addressing this unique contribution, which is defined as a common ethical language on fundamental points of international life, it is important to detail the different layers of our hamburger. And let us start with the very first one. The Church. As part of the program on Catholic studies, you may have excellent classes on history of the Church. But that's not the point here. What we have to be aware of is that there is no Holy See, there is no Vatican State, so there is no question about that. If there is no Church. And so all started with, and I took this reference of the New Testament, the Gospel according to Matthew, I will build my church. But what do we understand when we say that? Is it the Catholic Church as the institution we know? No. We are talking about Christian faithful, the gathering of the faithful, which is going through history and humankind as a constant presence since the empty tomb of the Passion and the Resurrection. It all started there in Jerusalem, and that's this layer, faith-based layer, which is absolutely needed to understand Catholic Church, Catholic Roman Church. And because Catholic Roman Church, then you can understand Vatican City State, and you can understand Holy See. This church, canon, that's the rule in Greek, and I'm referring to canon law, which means the Code of Canon Law, 1983, for the Roman Catholic Latin Church. There is another code which is 1991 for the Catholic Church, but Oriental churches, different code. But in this code, Canon 204, that's kind of basic in canon law. It defines who is a Christian faithful, but then it says the mission which, to this group of faithful, mission which God has entrusted to the church to fulfill in the world. Why is there a presence of the Pope? Why is there a presence of the Catholic Church in the international community? It's because there is a mission to be present in the world. We're talking about theology, not exactly, and canon law, not exactly international affairs. But that's the very root of everything. This church constitutes and are organized in this world as a society. So we have a difference between this church, group of faithful, and the organized, the institutionalized church, which is the Catholic Church, governed by the successor of Peter and the bishop in communion with him. So when we talk about a pope and international position of the pope, we are at a different level of this presence in the world as an institution, as the church. Church goes first. It is then a genuine legal person based on a primary legal order, divine law. No other international entity is claiming to be based on divine law. It is then a spiritual sovereignty, not a political one. It has an international activity because of this mission in the world, and a presence which is recognized. Firstly, by Italian state. And we will discuss that when we look at the Vatican City State. There is an international treaty to establish this state. But not only. It's also recognized by other states through other treaties, and we call them concordates. Concordates are dealing with the presence of Catholic communities in one or another country. And for centuries, it was just the Vatican like that, the church like that. And you will see that when we talk about the Vatican City State, that there is a big change. You can't see walls around the area. No walls. It's all in Rome. So there is no state created at that time. And we talk only about the church. This idea of a universal church on earth with a presence in the world, in the international community, is confirmed by the First Lateran Treaty, 11 February 1929. Actually, there are 3 treaties. The one which is acknowledging the presence of this spiritual power among the states in the international community. There is a second one which is giving the economic independence to the new entity created, which is the Vatican City-State. Roughly, in 1929, it was about 500,000 millions of euros. Big piggy bank. And it was so explained by the Pope. The Supreme Pontiff, considering on one hand the immense damage sustained by the Apostolic See, the loss of the Papal States, through the loss of the patrimony of St. Peter constituted by the ancient pontifical states and of the ecclesiastical property, and on the other side the even increasing needs of the Church in the city of Rome alone, and taking into consideration the present financial condition of the state after World War I. Italy is just like any other state, not very flourishing. Taking into consideration this situation and the economic condition of the Italian people, especially after the war, has deemed it well to restrict the request for indemnity to the barest necessity. That was always the same idea. To get the minimum needed to continue the mission in the world. That's basically what is leading the position of the Pope in the international community. Now, when we talk about this spiritual power, when we talk about this church subsisting into the Catholic Church, and when we talk about the Pope, we have to think about who is effectively working, making decisions, taking action at the international level. And we have then to consider the Roman Curia, which is consisting of the Secretary of State, Papal Secretariat, Council of Public Affairs of the Church, some congregations, tribunals, other institutions. What we have to keep in mind is a very recent reform of all this Curia, back to March 19, 2022, by a new apostolic constitution, Predicate Evangelium, proclaim the gospel. It was reorganized completely. And we can take and keep in mind 2 things. We have now 16 ministries. We can call them ministries, but they are dicasteries, if you're using the proper word. 16. And then the financial aspect is separate from the Secretary of State. No hand anymore on the piggy bank. And there is a very, very careful and transparent, more transparent gestion of just those finances. Looking at canon law, we think about canon 361, and we understand apostolic see, referring equally to Holy See, as the Roman Pontiff, the Pope, but also Secretariat of State and those institutions of the Roman Curia. And thinking of international affairs, we have one section which is dedicated to relations with the states. There is then a position of the Pope, because of the existence of the Church, and you can see that in the titles used to speak about the Pope. You see, Vicar of Christ, Pastor of the Church, the whole Church. But the Pope does have other titles, you see. Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, St. Peter. But the main one is Bishop of Rome. It is because he's Bishop of Rome that he gets this position, international position. Then you have other titles like Primate of Italy, Metropolitan, also in Rome, but that's on church side, and that's more Italian aspect. But he's also, and that's the very last one, he's also sovereign of the state of Vatican City. So let's go now to the second layer of our burger. The Vatican City State, within Rome, walls all around the state, and you see, including St. Peter's Square, which has a very special status. When it's open, when it's closed for religious functions, it is under jurisdiction of the Vatican. When it's open, it's under jurisdiction of Italy. So there are little things to understand, but basically it's a very small territory. And when it was created, it confirmed the existence of the Church, but also of the Holy See as entity present at international level within the community. Because the treaty, Lateran treaties from 1929, they were signed between the Holy See as an entity, international level, with Italian Kingdom, another state. A state would never sign something with a counterpart which is not agreed at the same level, right? It's not only the Vatican Hill, Vatican meaning prophecy in Latin. And then that's perhaps why you have a lot of conspiracy theory about prophecies, right? Because it means, Vatican means prophecy. But within the city of Rome, and even out of the city of Rome, you have some places belonging to the Vatican City-State or under jurisdiction of Vatican City-State, or Holy See, depending on, belonging to Italy, but with a special extraterritoriality status, like embassies, in a way. So you have this San Calixto, which is in Trastevere area in Rome. That's the whole, that's a big palace over there, and you have Santa Maria in Trastevere next to this building. But you have also other places like San Giovanni in Laterano, where the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. The Pope is not the Bishop of Rome in St. Peter's Square or Basilic. The Pope is Bishop of Rome in San Giovanni in Laterano. That's the Baptisterium of San Giovanni in Laterano, and just next to the Baptisterium, and you see the trails, that's the Vatican City-State, a piece of it. And within this piece of Vatican City-State, you have a university, which is University of the Holy See, with the campus over there. Then you have also, out of Rome, Castel Gandolfo, which is summer residence of the Pope, not used much as summer residence. But you see a number of buildings, and as a way to contribute to science, astronomy, first research was made there in Castel Gandolfo, back to, it was first in the Vatican, but then it moved to out of the city. So this is also one place which is not Italian territory, but part of this Vatican city-state, as we refer to. Same thing with the Gregorian University. It's operated by the Jesuits, but it doesn't belong to the Jesuits. It's Holy See territory, not Vatican. It's just extraterritoriality but under jurisdiction of the Holy See. So you have a number of pieces like that within Rome. And if you, just to being curious, you can go on the website of the Vatican City-State. It's all in Italian, but you can see that they make a difference under this item Rapporti Diplomatici. They make a difference between what is Holy See and what is Vatican City-State. And the claim of the Church is that the two are different internationally recognized entities, which is not accepted by all the states, right? And which is not accepted within and by scholars, not all of the scholars. But of course, our main layer is the Holy See within our burger. And the Holy See, that's the way to, and that's perhaps the first thing we have in mind when we think about international position of the Pope. The Pope is there as embodying an international entity, which is the Holy See. So Holy See is meaning within the context of the Church, the government of the Church as community of faithful, but at international level, it does have a specific recognition by states and by the international community as a whole. Doesn't work. Doesn't work anymore. No.
Wrong side.
Yeah.
There. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. So, looking at the Holy See, we have three sources we have to go through. The very first one is canon law. The second one is Lateran Treaty. And the third one is Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, 1961. They all converge to say that Holy See is an entity sui generis, which is meaning in Latin on his own, not to be compared with any other entity at international level, but as such, with full rights, own rights based on canon law, but also right of any entity, state, Vienna Convention, and also given the specific position with the state of Italy. And looking at that, we see that it's an innate and independent right to appoint, send, transfer, recall legates. This is a very old tradition in the history of the church, to send legates. Those legates are legates to the church, but they're all legates to the states, legates to the church. It means in the different countries to the community of faithful, but also legates to the state operating this country in a way, to the government, right? If we look at Article 12 of the First Lateran Treaty, Italy is recognizing the rights of the Holy See to passive and active legation. It's saying the same thing in a different word, in a different context, but in a context of an international treaty between Italy and the Holy See. And when we look at Article 2, you see that the establishment of diplomatic relations between states, permanent diplomatic missions, take place by mutual consent. Why does the Holy See have 100, and I don't remember now, but that huge number of diplomats? Because there is mutual consent to accept the presence of legates of the Pope in those countries. You have very, very, very few mentions in international law of the Holy See, or not even the Holy See as such, but you have the mention in Article 14, paragraph 1 of nuncius and internuncius. Internuncius is someone acting as a nuncius when there is no legate appointed by the Pope, right? Article 16.3, it's dealing with a kind of special position within the diplomatic corps in a country, which is the position of the dean. The dean of the diplomatic corps is the diplomat in charge of one country, which is staying longer than the others. He is the one who has arrived, not the most fresh one, but the very late one. And there is something said about the precedence and the representative of the Holy See, because comparing to other diplomats, legates of the Holy See are staying in a country longer than any other, which means that they have an understanding of what is happening in the country, understanding of what is happening in the church in the different countries. So you have the three layers. Those three layers, they're all acting in this with the same vision And as a way of conclusion, we can say that the way of acting and making decision is driven by seeking peace, seeking truth, and seeking justice. That's why Holy See would be part of a number of treaties on disarmament. You can ask yourself, why on earth would the Holy See, with the Pontifical Guard only as an army, be part of a disarmament treaty? Well, exactly for that reason of seeking peace at all costs, which means also speaking with everyone and keeping channels to speak with everyone, even those guys we don't want to speak to. They want to keep channel dialogue open at all costs. It is a diplomacy of mercy, because beyond what is usually the target of a country, equity, some kind of balance in rapports between states and interest, Holy See is going beyond, seeking relationship between people based on caritas, which means love for others. So, doing so, the Church, through the different channels, bishops involved, religious involved, the Vatican City State, which is part to some treaties securing international position of the Pope in matters of communication, in matters of postal services, in a number of technical matters, or the Holy See seeking and securing the position of the Pope and expressing the position of the Pope through this not only religious nature, but also universal nature of the Church. They all converge virtuously to be acting not based on their own interest, but on the interest of common good, and not common good of just all of us today, but common good of humankind. Thank you.
Okay, we have a little bit of time for some questions if everybody has any questions. Start with you, Jason.
Super, thank you, Daniel. Welcome back, Father. It's really good to see you. I have one quick comment, one short question, and then a question I might ask for your thoughts on. The first one is the comment. Thank you for showing me the fresco, but I don't know if I'll ever see it again the same way. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's quite interesting. So thank you for that. My short question is this. So the embassies of the Holy See in other countries, do they have the same legal status as any other embassy? Like it's their territory? Yeah, so that's what I thought. I just want to confirm that.
Yes.
My question to you is this.
They have the same status because the status is based on international treaties and mostly those treaties on diplomatic relations and or consular relations, the Vienna treaties, as we say.
So here's my question. You mentioned the Vatican, the Holy See will enter into international treaties, they'll sign them, they'll be party to them, but they don't have a vote in the United Nations.
No.
So I'm curious as to your view on how the mission of the Church, its global mission, how is that an advantage or a disadvantage with regard to the exercise of its mission?
So thank you for the question. The absence of right to vote at the United Nations It is something which is, the position of the Holy See is the position of permanent observer. When you're observing, you're not taking part to a vote. So, when you're observing, you're also the one who is continuously speaking with everyone. When you vote, in a way, you have to choose your camp. You have to choose your side. The Holy See doesn't have to choose any side, and sometimes doesn't want to. So it is making the experience of being in the delegation sometimes quite difficult, because you have to speak with representatives of states, and they want you to be supporting a decision. They want you to say yes to something, and you're just not allowed to do so. So that's why this presence is sometimes at the margin difficult to maintain, but on the long run, it turns out to be a positive one.
Hi, thanks for your talk. My name is Glenn Drummond. I happen to be a classmate of Jason's from St. Paul's High School, and I'm happy to hear you back and giving this talk. I'm going to ask a controversial question then. When the Pope comments about the state of the war in Ukraine, is he's in what terms is he speaking? And when there are specific questions asked, does that actually go to the Secretary of State with whom he conferred? So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you. I just want to quote the address of His Holiness Pope Francis to members of the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See. So let us make a difference between comments which are second-hand comments, and you can see them in the press or wherever you want. And that kind of source, by the way, those sources are public. So there is nothing under secrecy, nothing secret. The Pope receiving on Monday, 8 January 2024, the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See, he said this about peace. It is the responsibility of the Holy See within the international community to be a prophetic voice and to appeal to consciences. And that's exactly what the Holy See is doing. So, one could say, okay, there are differences between Church, Holy See, Vatican City State, perhaps is speaking in its capacity of Holy See, Vatican City State, or head of the Church, depending on to whom he's speaking to. But regardless this, there is always a message of peace. And there is always this idea of, and if you look at this address, which is 18, 19 pages, but it gives you a very large sense of what is happening in the world and where the Pope is bringing some accent. So he's talking about Palestine and Israel. He's talking about numerous humanitarian crises and conflict. And when he's talking about all of that, he's referring to a polarization that compromises social harmony, that weakens democratic institutions. He's talking about modern wars, and in those wars, civil are used as target. So he's referring to a number of things, not necessarily mentioning Ukraine and Russia, in this address, but referring to those principles which is basic in the international community. And even if the Pope is the only one to say that, even if there is sometimes a voice which is the voice of the Pope, but then sometimes the voice of the Secretary of State, at the end of the day, it's always the same, it comes from the same source, and it's always based on the same principles. So, yes, there are differences and there are different ways, but it's also liberty of the Pope to use one way to speak to some people or another way, and to make all the different ways contributing to peace.
Any other questions? Michelle?
I guess I just wonder, I guess this entity is capable of being sued in international law, and I guess I'm wondering, I'm assuming it is, has it ever been sued for, I don't know, breach of international law or something of that nature?
Yes. If you're an entity at international level, you have rights, you have duties, you have responsibilities. So, not in international affairs, but in those domestic affairs, national-based affairs of abuse of children, or spiritual abuse sometimes. You have some lawyers trying to get not only the National Conference of Bishops involved, but eventually to get the Pope, Universal Church, and or the Holy See involved as international entity with a legal personality. There are always ways to try that, and we see that. I have seen that as a lawyer in Belgium back to 2004. Next to that, which is usually the kind of official part of it and the legal part of it, you have initiatives of the Church to contribute to a more responsible response to the same issues and problems. So again, different channels, but I was, based on my own experience, 2004, in the Belgian tribunals, I had as a counterpart a lawyer who was saying that the Pope is like a contractor, the priest is like an employee, there is labor law, which is canon law, based on that responsibility. So there is a full misunderstanding of. So that's why when I try to help you to grasp this understanding of those differences and the complexity, but also the intertwined aspect of those entities, it's not to conclude that there is a way to escape responsibility. There is no way to escape responsibility. But there is a way to take responsibility being understood by others as the Church, the Holy See, or the Vatican City State truly are. And that's one thing that cannot be taken from them, to claim the right to be understood as they are.
Fantastic.
So students will be off to class pretty soon, but before we give Father Albert one last thank you, I wanted to note for everybody our next lecture, Dr. Jennifer Bain, coming from Dalhousie University on October 30th, also here at noon, speaking to us about that great Hildegard of Bingen. And also, there's a survey for students on your tables there that you should take, and tentatively, but probably not tentatively anymore, the Jesuit lecture will take place on November 19th, so you can mark your calendars for that. Now, we'll also provide Father Albert, since he left us last, we got new sweatshirts, so we can give him one of these.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Albert.
Just the final words. Thank you very much for being here today. And please, next time you order a burger at the Bell Tower Cafe, be aware of something.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.